Can't wear these the whole time.
Just wear them for the beginning and then take them off.
Okay. All right, who's got mid-December brain? Are we done with this year
We're darn
already?
near late December.
All right, well, this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review, Christmas edition, as we will not be publishing again until after Christmas when I will be putting away all of the Christmas sweaters. I got my Dole one here. I heard Chiquita was doing a giveaway on their website for some Christmas sweaters. Makes me wonder what Equifruit would do with a Christmas sweater template, what theirs would look like. It would probably be pretty badass.
I would
Um,
think yes.
well, I can't take myself seriously. But let me
Fair enough.
put
I
the
was thinking
business
about
glasses
wearing a
on.
Chiefs shirt because they'll play twice between now and next week when we do week in review. It's the compressed Christmas schedule. How
That's
weird.
kind of absurd and not really wise for people putting that much strain on their bodies. I'm just saying, as a football mom, I can't imagine my kid playing more than one football game a week. That
They're
is,
doing it to four AFC playoff teams, which will be good for fans, but if get stars hurt, that's going to be a short-term gain, long-term loss. Uh,
yeah. I have a feeling they can afford to lose one.
no,
So,
I don't mean games. I mean players.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We don't want to lose any players.
No, that's
Um,
bad.
right. We've got kind of, I mean, a bummer of a week in news. It's a little doom and gloom in the news side as well. First off, I saw a post on LinkedIn and I was like, what's going on here? It looks like Plenty is getting out of the greens game and switching over to strawberries. They had a post on LinkedIn and they called it a strategic shift for the business to start focusing on strawberries. If you recall, a couple of years ago, I was at South by Southwest and they were announcing a deal with Driscoll's. Driscoll's was doing an event, and I was talking to those folks there, and they're like, "Yeah, we've got this new deal with Plenty." Um, and so Plenty's a vertical grower. I have a long history of Plenty in South by Southwest. That was the guy who was on the stage talking about how outdoor growers only grow iceberg because it's cheap and easy. That's ironic.
That's some bad karma in retrospect.
So Plenty is switching focus and closing its Compton farm, Compton, California. And they just opened this. They're planning this massive facility on the East Coast to grow strawberries, and that is extremely strategic. I mean, it kind of goes along with some of the stuff that I've seen. I can remember seeing a really great presentation at Southeast Produce Council. Sonia, I can't remember her last name right now, but she was talking about how indoor farms, the only way for them to be profitable, like really like business profitable, is to get into hyper local things like and high value, hyper local and high value. And strawberries, you talk about growing them in Virginia indoors. That is solving a lot of problems that berries have as far as going coast to coast. Of course, we had the Florida deal. I just saw a post about Driscoll's sweetest batch coming out of Florida, but that's such a limited time period and limited volumes to be able to get to the bulk of the United States. So indoors kind of seems to be the way that we can go, and that seems to be the way that Plenty has decided to go.
It makes a lot of business sense. I mean, it's actually it's not good news when you're using euphemisms like strategic shifts. Um, it means the real estate in Compton, California, I'm sure is worth way more than it is to grow greens because they just aren't high value enough. And I'm sure the real estate's cheaper in Virginia and it's closer to a market that can't get year-round strawberries. And as we saw in the strawberry market this year with all the weather problems in California, it was hard to find high quality strawberries at decent prices for a fair amount of time. And it is a higher value crop. And I would expect that we would see more shifts to higher value crops when they grow them indoors.
Right. And, just thinking about the logistics of getting berries from coast to coast, it does make sense for a lot of these indoor firms to be focusing berries on in the Midwest and on the East Coast to try to solve some of these problems and to, there's parity when we talk about cost of production and when you factor in the extreme transportation part of it. And being able to get berries from California all the way to Virginia and New York and New Hampshire and places like that. It's a long way. It costs a lot of money. So we can find ways to get this close to or closer to outdoor production cost. I'm sure that they haven't figured that out yet. Otherwise, these little indoor farms would be just like popping up all over everywhere. So they're still figuring this out. I will note that Plenty had a $400 million backing for this Compton farm. With Walmart, they had just announced a deal with 7-Eleven to supply greens to 7-Eleven. They had a lot going on, and so I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything else as follow-up on whether this is going to be like the end of greens for them. They have an R&D facility in Wyoming. But for now, they're taking that whole California growing thing, at least at the Compton farm, out of the equation to focus on strawberries. And they're partnered with Driscoll's on this. And if there is a company out there that knows how to grow berries, there's plenty of companies that know how to grow berries, but Driscoll's is definitely one that knows how to market them.
We're also seeing a continuing shift in the CEA space to away from can you do it to now do it profitably. And
Yes.
there's no more sinking money into something that's not going to turn a profit.
Yeah, we have been talking about CEA for 8, 9 years now, and back when they were dumping billions of dollars into these farms that were not producing a product that was, suitable for market. We're not even talking about profitable. We're talking about that could be sold at a grocery store or sold into food service. And now, like the money has to be serious and for real now, and the product has to be serious and for real and marketable. So those are the moves that we're seeing. We're seeing some of the big names in the early days of this space. Bright Farms just opened another farm here in Texas recently. So the bigger getting bigger. The ones that seem to the cream is rising to the top, I guess would say, or at least the ones that have found a way into the market and onto shelves.
Well, one place that they know how to do profitable greenhouse growing is Canada.
Yes.
But they're in the news also this week, and it's not for happy reasons.
No.
They are having some major problems up there when it comes to affordable food.
Yes, and Canadians have been raising alarm about this for, I mean, since even before the beginning of the pandemic, but the pandemic sure pushed it. They had record low food inflation in 2017 in Canada. And then I'm looking at this chart that we've got from Canada's food price report. And they are saying that Canadian food is expected to be 3 to 5% more expensive next year. And they threw out a number, and Canadians spend $16,833 a year on food, and that'll be up $800 Canadian dollars from last year. And this chart, their food prices are kind of like this from 2010, 2011, and then in 2016 to 2017, inflation went to rock bottom, and then it kind of creeped up, and then of course, along with everyone else, and in late 2021, food inflation went up, but it does not look good. And then we had another report. The government response to this has been very frustrating for everyday Canadians. The Canadian president's approval rating is at an all-time low. And they're trying to do some programs like tax holidays at restaurants because restaurants are really suffering. It's just really challenging times for Canadians.
Yeah, we had a report from Restaurants Canada talking about how they were hoping to get a tax holiday and it wasn't approved, and talking about unprecedented labor problems and rising costs and so much pressure on Canadian consumers that they just don't want to spend the extra money at groceries or at restaurants, and it's really harming the restaurant industry there. In Canada, they say bankruptcies increased by 45% in the first two-thirds of 24. Um, and with costs increase 25%, insurance up 24, utilities 20. Um, it's hard economic times, and they have elections next year. If we're not Canadian, but I do believe they have elections next year, and it sounds like people are tired of Trudeau's government and policies, and it does seem much more restrictive in Canada. Yeah, as we saw during the pandemic, they had much stronger restrictions on people there, and people and trade moving in and out of Canada that I'm sure exacerbated these problems.
Yeah, I can recall being at the Swipe Expo, talking about some of the issues that we have with trade and some of the uncertainties we have, especially as it regarding to the tomato suspension agreement. And Tom Pierce from Sobeys on my panel was saying, hey, y'all are worried about exporting tomatoes or what, not just tomatoes, but all these other crops to the U.S. and potential tariffs. You can just send them on over to Canada. I think Canada's going to have some of its own issues as far as trade goes as well, as far as exports go. But yeah, it's kind of a really bummer of a deal when we look at it. Let's close out the year with really bad doom and gloom news from Canada. After we had such good news for producers last week as far as their pack-alike protections getting passed. So you win some, you lose some, I guess.
I guess that the timing of it's excellent because if there's going to be financial problems, it's nice to have that protection.
Yeah. Hey, there you go.
Anticipating financial problems, perhaps.
Speaking of financial problems,
Yes.
let, us go to the third thing we saw. Grubhub. Grubhub, which is the meal delivery third-party service, has been bounced around and we reported that they got acquired by Wonder, which is, I think, backed by Walmart or something like that, something to do with that. They had drastically dropped in value. When it was acquired by Just Eat Takeaway, it was like a $7 billion transaction. Acquired by Wonder, it was a 665 million with an M. And now the FTC came after them for some sketchy practices.
Yeah, unlawful. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a charge from the FTC, and basically Grubhub agreed to um, pay the settlement, not exactly a fine, um, but it's $25 million. And the FTC spelled out some pretty alarming charges against Grubhub that um, they were basically using hidden fees and delivery costs, calling things two different things, giving a cost for delivery and then adding on service fees to it, and then telling customers those were separate, but in their own accounting, counting both as delivery fees. And then they were also being dishonest with their drivers about what they would be getting paid. Um, but I think Grubhub is getting caught up a little bit in a broader idea of hidden fees in products. And I would think that if this FTC leadership had more time, they might be doing more of this to other groups. I mean, we know, like, anytime you stay at a hotel, you see all these extra fees on there, or you buy tickets to a concert or a game, and there's all these extra fees. Consumers are getting tired of it, and it is dishonest because they're not being disclosed. People agree to a certain price, and then what they actually pay can be 10 to 50% above that price. And I'm glad the FTC is doing that. It is a very consumer, pro-consumer move. So that's good to see. But we also noticed at the very end of this news out of the FTC is it says the settlement um, the settlement judgment was actually for 140 million against Grubhub, and it's suspended and reduced to 25 million. FTC says based on the company's inability to pay the full amount. Like that is,
So
whoa,
you're
that's not
broke.
good.
No, that's not good. A company that got acquired for $7.5 billion a couple of years ago. It can't afford $140 million judgment. Of course, they don't want to pay $140 million, and they're going to try to, any business is going to try to find a way to get that reduced. I can remember the first time and last time I ever ordered from Grubhub. I was on business, I think at a PBH meeting in San Francisco, and I just didn't want to leave my hotel room. And so I ordered Grubhub, and it cost me like three times what I thought it was going to cost. So, and I never ordered it again. But I'm that kind of person. Fool me once, I'm done. I'm not going to do that. Even though it was business money, it was like a business dinner, and I didn't even really pay it out of my own pocket. I'm still too cheap to go back to something like that. Meanwhile, on the other hand, I had to order HEB delivery the other day because my son was sick and my other son took the other car. We when and I'm sure the personal shopper who took care of this for favor, um, probably was like, "Oh, we got to get this person the ginger ale and the saltine crackers."
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a that's a pretty simple recipe. Only
yeah.
no one orders that unless they're having problems keeping
Yeah.
stuff in.
Yeah. So, but the HEB is like a 3.99 fee for the delivery, and then you can tip on top of that. You don't have to, but it's a decent thing to do, have somebody drive to your house from the store. Because you can. And it reminded me of the very early days of grocery delivery when that guy from Instacart, before anyone knew what Instacart was, this was probably in like 2016 or something like that, and said there's only a few reasons for people to order grocery delivery, and that's you need it. You're in a space in your life that's a temporary phase that you are in need, or you're going to pay for the luxury. And most of the people that I know who are doing grocery pickup or grocery delivery are not in that what I would consider luxury tax bracket. And that's just personal friends or whatever. We're not all luxurious folks. But we've gotten used to that. We've gotten used to not actually paying what it actually really probably costs to do some of this. So it is not cheap to have someone drive to a restaurant and pick up your food for you and drop it off for you. So when you see one price, you got to really think about, is this the cost of doing business? Who all is getting enough paid here? And I have a feeling that some of these third-party services, we're either going to have to start ponying up and actually pay the cost of doing business on this stuff, or they're going to fail. And it sounds like Grubhub is not doing great. Business is not booming here. And when I was searching for it in the Produce Blue Book archives, I kept finding Grubhub associated with other businesses that have flopped. Like the Rapid Grocery, right?
Yeah.
They were affiliated with Buyk at one time. And that flopped. So not all of these are going to make it through.
Well, Grubhub did have their own statement in which they categorically deny the allegations, calling them wrong, misleading, or no longer applicable to our business. So maybe they can blame previous ownership.
They could blame previous ownership. Yeah, that acquisition, the most recent one was back in November. And no longer, I did notice that it's no longer applicable to our business. Perhaps they have removed all of these junk fees, I guess is what you would call it. and have streamlined the situation, and so it won't be a problem anymore. One can only hope, because people are not going to be able to afford this luxury going forward, especially when we're talking about, the cost of groceries, and people are complaining so much about the cost of groceries. Um, we're not all teenagers using mom and dad's money to DoorDash pizza or whatever for you and all your buddies. I'm speaking from personal experience.
Oh,
When I
so it kind of sounds like it.
when I see DoorDash pop up on that shared bank account credit card, I'm like, "What are you DoorDashing now? Did you collect money from all your chucklehead friends to pay for all of this?" Yeah, yeah, mom, I did. I'm like, but when you actually have to pay for this stuff with your own real money, the pool of people who have that kind of disposable income is quite shallow at the moment.
Yes. And even for the kids, it becomes less viable when they can drive cars themselves. I was going to say their own cars, but it's not their own car, it's my car.
Yeah, it's my
Um,
car.
but they do have to pay gas.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but it becomes less uh not necessarily viable, but less like a lifeline, less necessary. Um
Right. They start
and
to learn the value of money and time, and maybe you could spend $20 better than having your $10 meal delivered to you.
your $10 meal delivered to you, and it tastes not as good as it would dining in at a restaurant. But then we have a whole new crop of 16-year-olds every day. So there's a sucker born every day. So, all right. Well, that's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. And have a Merry Christmas, everyone. Here's my
Merry Christmas. And we will see you before New Year.
before New Year's. We'll be back, but not before Christmas.
Yeah. After two NFL games from four NFL teams.